Good afternoon and welcome everybody. And thank you for joining Turn Left Media and the B2B Institute for this August virtual event, Marketing to the CFO. My name is Marius Greff and I'm the co-founder of Turn Left Media, LinkedIn's exclusive marketing partner across sub-Saharan Africa. The B2B Institute is a think tank funded by LinkedIn that researches how to accelerate growth in business-to-business relationships. And their initial focus is on B2B marketing, a largely ill-defined category. There's still lots of room for growth in terms of the knowledge we have about how B2B marketers think and behave. And now they partner with leading experts in academia and industry to study the impact of B2B brand building on marketing, product sales, corporate communication, and talent development. Now, I'm really excited to have Jennifer Shaw-Sweet with us today. Jennifer is the EMEA lead for the B2B Institute at LinkedIn. She's based in the beautiful London, and they've just been having the most amazing heat wave over the last while, so I think she enjoys South Africa. And she comes with a wealth of history working with agencies such as JWT, Saatchi & Saatchi, and AMF BBDO. To talk a little bit about our topic today, the finance team is arguably marketing's most important stakeholders within the business. And if you've ever seen a marketer realize when the budget cuts happen, there really is a need for close alignment between marketing and finance. And we know that we need to make this communication an external requirement. So in this webinar, we'll delve into the finding gathered by the IPA's Fran Cassidy as we explore the approach of high-achieving CMOs and CFOs. Learn how to change the relationship with insights on the finance mindset based on shared language and trust relationships within the business. So Jennifer will share the research and insights with us, and then John Bowles, Turn Left Media's co-founder and our own B2B Institute ambassador in Africa, will discuss the research in a little bit more detail during a fireside. So the recording will be shared to all of our attendees after the event, and please post all questions in the chat. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us today. And we're really excited to see what you're going to be sharing today. So I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Hello to everyone, and welcome to London. And as many of you are, we're still working from home, so welcome to my spare room. So this research and actually the subsequent white paper, which is available from the B2B Institute website, was developed, as Marius was saying, together with the IPA and our lead researcher, Fran Cassidy. And it was actually conducted with a number of CMO level marketers and CFO level finance experts in a statistically significant number of high achieving businesses. The methodology was very rigorous and was formed from survey and quant interviews in depth. It also took on learnings from previous IPA studies, and also for many of those were for the Financial Times and EY, along with a long history of this kind of research. We were honing and checking and developing from these nascent theories to create a stronger understanding of what's really going on within business and also specifically in B2B. And I think it's useful. It's useful from two perspectives: what we do within our own organizations and also what our customers are experiencing and the challenges that they're facing. And I think uniquely, we're looking at similar issues ourselves from both sides of the conference calls, from how we get investment in marketing to how our colleagues get investment for themselves and what our finance friends feel the need and what information our finance friends need in order to make decisions, the right decisions and decisions for the long-term health of their businesses. And I looked at this in the context of marketing surveys as well, that we've been conducting across EMEA and the region. So I wanted to give you some of the latest data in this. Our research objectives were around the focus placed and the value placed upon marketing by marketers, and also the value that finance people placed on marketing. We also looked at the difference that was made through marketing evaluation and effectiveness, and does it make a difference to marketing to be able to show that effectiveness, and also what factors the functions need to bring their work closer together. And for an example of some of the organizations that we spoke to, you can see that there are a number of sectors represented here, from the major schools all the way across business schools. And we spoke to a number of business experts, to consultancies, to finance, to logistics, to fintech, to tech, and all the way across to things like the Department for International Trade. And we actually talked to these companies globally. So it was across all of the global regions, and we tried to find a statistically useful number across each region so we could give you a global point of view. But first, let's take a look at the situation right now. So how is marketing sitting as a concept within businesses of standing right now? So the Marketing Science Institute, this is a separate study, revealed that only 2.6% of board members have at least one member with marketing experience, and only 4% of board members think marketing experience is important, while 47% of boards believe financial experience is important. You can see there's a huge imbalance here between the people who generate growth, which we'd argue are marketing, and the people who generate money or talk about money and have the budget to invest in growth, which would be finance. We also saw that those boards with one marketing experience director in them could demonstrate a 3 percentage point increase in total shareholder return. So we could also see how important and useful marketing was in the context of those businesses. What was really interesting then, if we overlap this data with sort of some further research, this again was an IPA piece of research, was that actually the metrics that brand can move and the marketing discipline is able to influence are rarely recognized as the tools that can achieve it. Now, this is really important. We've got people who aren't experienced in marketing looking for improvements in things like margin, enterprise growth, future cash flow, and profitability, but not recognizing that marketing and brand in particular were the tools that were able to achieve many of these outcomes. And it just means that brand is currently a sort of hidden force, rarely attributed to the metrics that it can move. And that meant that people were kind of running a little bit blind in their business, but it also showed where there is an opportunity for those companies that were really fluent in marketing to actually demonstrate growth and to demonstrate the value of that marketing in their own companies. And traditionally, many organizations have not had healthy relationships between marketing and finance, and this is where I think we're able to unlock potential improvement, and that's because whilst having an amazing product is a great example of how you can create a robust business, those that happen upon you, obviously your customers will be loyal unless they're forced by some kind of error to try alternatives. But with branding, you're able to considerably spread the knowledge of your amazing product and the fact that you're trusted and celebrated amongst your customer base to more people, and therefore recruit people against churn. So inevitably you lose some customers over time, and relying on loyalty is not enough. And being able to create more of a customer base is a much more resilient way to maintain business. And let's be honest, we all need these skills, a bit like a written horoscope. I think you may see some of yourselves in many of the characteristics that we see across business. And here we see on the left-hand side, the responsibilities that are vital for a CMO, and on the right-hand side, the responsibilities vital for a CFO. But what is essential is that actually where value is created and where margin and pricing and revenue is grown is where the two cross over, where the voice of the customer, marketing's role as being the shining knight of the customer's voice within the business, is able to meet the voice of the business and the purse of the business to actually invest in that long-term growth and business resilience. So as we looked at this, we created a framework, and working with Fran, we created a framework that matched against this data. And it looks at the role of value, accountability, language, understanding, and evidence as 5 pillars that actually start to create a framework for trust and a collaborative relationship between the CMO or the marketing department and the CFO. And it doesn't matter if you're a CMO listening to this or an entry-led entry-level grad listening to this, actually what's important is that this is a framework for developing your engagement with the business as marketers, and actually it's a huge opportunity for career growth amongst every rank of marketing to develop this relationship and actually embed yourself within the business priorities of business that we're seeing this go through. So let's have a look at our own evidence. Let's start with value. So what do we mean? To be a value creator, you have to understand these three elements: how value, the understanding where value is created, how customers perceive and receive value, and understanding value that brands deliver short and long term. And how it's created within an organization is really important, because understanding where value lies in the organization, you can start by setting up regular meetings with your finance department to actually start to hone and develop the perception of value of your own brand, of your own assets, of your own marketing activity. A helpful starting point is actually Peter Doyle's chart from marketing management and strategy, where we actually see here two ways that companies make money: growth and productivity, cash margin and productivity. And it's very obvious that marketing is important for growth because it expands the market. You can convert non-users and steal share. There's this the importance of increasing usage and entering new segments, and then also through market penetration, where you're stealing share just from competitors and honing and taking power over your marketplace or your sector. And there's obviously beyond that a psychological sense of the ability of marketing to create your own sector, which can then mean that you're unique within your sector and you have far fewer competitive threats. You're able to create a moat around your business. But there's also around the business side of it, this ability to reduce lower profit activities, so to make choices based on customer knowledge, to be able to raise prices because people perceive you to be of a greater value, and then also in deciding upon variable costs based on the marketing contribution of customer knowledge. It's a helpful way to start to understand how your financial conversations can be more productive as marketers. And I thought that this was a great quote that came from a brand director of the Royal Bank of Canada. I have a weekly meeting with finance. I really want to understand what our income drivers are, and I need to understand the margins and which products we need to be focusing on going forward. We talk about risk and cash flow. That's a really useful way of finding a role for the brand, but also looking long term at how the brand is able to impact on decision makers and to be able to navigate a marketplace that's looking tough, or a marketplace that's looking like it's full of opportunity, depending on the cycle. We also want to make sure that we get access to customers directly, the fight for market research budget, and then also to explore customer value by segment, pre, post, and during purchase, taking responsibility for competitor and trend analysis. All of these are great ways of understanding customers and bringing the voice of the customer into the business conversation and the board. And having finance on side to be able to do that and being able to explain that to finance is a great way of influencing decisions. So I think it's important to use marketers' insight skills to uncover the emotional side of this purchase process and the relationship with the customer, and ensure the voice of the customer is heard before major decisions are made, potentially even mistakes are made because no one's got the voice of the customer or an understanding of how your brand fits in with the customer's life, those mistakes can be undone or avoided in the first place. So that's if they're unvoiced, then no one is able to prevent any accidents. Now, accountability. Accepting accountability for value creation is really important. It demonstrates a maturity within the business that marketing is able to assume, engage with, and actually it shows how essential marketing is. And accountability beyond communication is really important because it's understood by the CFO, but it's also an accountability that demonstrates the role of marketing beyond communication and prevents marketing being sidelined as the colouring in department, or sidelined as just purely the creative way of communicating with customers. And actually, we were seeing this hugely demonstrated in a number of our most successful marketers' interviews, where they were demonstrating often a number, like they were giving across a financial metric for their level of accountability. And this brand executive director here is a great example. And setting up a meeting like this brand director did, or this executive director did, was a great way of planning forward and measuring success. Now, measuring success is really important because when you get access to customers directly, you're able to understand use your understanding to fight for marketing research budget and explore customer value by segment, pre, post, and during purchase. Taking this responsibility for this analysis just means that you're then able to measure success against what you found originally. Your understanding is then able to play as your understanding of how successful you've been and what metrics you've been able to move, and being able to measure that in ways that are useful to the business means that you're able to put yourself very much front and center of the success stories that are needed to be able to bring the business to life. So using those skills is a great way of bringing to life the value that you've created. And then language. Now, the use of language and value creation in business is incredibly important, but also using your insight to create new frame narratives to be able to understand, to increase that understanding within the business is fundamental, because it gives you an opportunity to be the voice that translates, not just translates the customer, but actually translates what the value that you're finding is how it's working, how it's coming to life in the products that you're creating, and also to translate your activities as marketers into activities that can really be understood in the boardroom. And that means, I'm afraid, taking a gulp and a deep breath and putting away some of the jargon of marketing that doesn't work to our favor. And you can see some lovely examples here around taking production costs and this association with marketing as a cost, and actually demonstrating the value that marketing brings from itself, not just to the business, but the value of asset creation, a long-term investment in an asset that's going to last maybe 3 or 4 years as a key brand asset, rather than being seen as a cost center. And then this idea of mental availability, switching to actually a guaranteed consideration set, demonstrates why it's important to invest in brand and market growth and reaching more potential future customers, not just in the short term, but in the long term, that you're actually investing in the next 6 to 9 to 12 months worth of customer consideration. The brand halo effect, switching to margin protection for range, really brings to life where these maneuvers can work to your favor, and from salience to stable market share is I think a poignant way of bringing to life the value that marketing is able to bring to the boardroom, but also to future cash flow, by bringing your long-term focus into a more business focused or a more financially focused language. And then again, moving from awareness to customer preference, and from qualified marketing leads, which is an incredibly internally focused way of talking about your sales pipeline. And all of these little switches in language are tiny changes that can actually really transform the conversations from appearing as the marketing department who don't understand everyone else, to actually using one of the main assets of marketing, which is the ability to translate and the ability to speak the language of the customer. If you then look at your finance team as the customer, actually translating into their own language is a great way of bringing them on side. And then again, you actually start to see the same way of changing language to bring to life shared business priorities in both reports and presentations and long-term planning. So going from 3 ad campaigns to 3 strategic phases, 3 strategic program phases, and actually showing a margin objective, rather than we want to put 50% into our budget into brand. Actually, you see the switches in these language that the switches in language that actually bring this focus to mind. Understanding is the next one, and it's really important to understand how marketing creates value and how that's understood within finance. That, again, it's another translation job, but also it's really important to improve the financial literacy among marketers. So it works both ways, educating finance about what you do, but also educating yourself about what finance does, and feeling really comfortable with the the terms of finance, with the measures of finance, and with the way that we understand financial priorities within the business. And also understanding the current CFO relationships and how to collaborate and partner more with their department is really important for a CMO, and it's important for senior marketers in general in coaching their teams to get better outcomes. And part of that is obviously to get better budgets as part of those objectives to get those outcomes. So working with them together to create potentially a financial effectiveness course or development of skills within the marketing department together with the finance department is also a great way of creating a joint learning relationship, and also an open door to be able to have very informal conversations that test marketing ideas or opportunities against the metrics that they would be judged on as far as the next sort of business decisions are concerned. Creating those better relationships is about planning too. And actually, if you see an annual budget as game day or a major sports opportunity, you would never arrive at a sports event underprepared, under-trained, or in a situation where you were even you didn't even have the right kit. And I think that it's a great analogy to think of the key budget meetings as game day, because you can actually then see how you might look backwards from game day and start your countdown to that time as a plan, as a long-term plan, looking back 3, 6, 9 months to how you strategically put yourself in a place where that meeting is the end point of a long journey of financial and business planning to justify a rigorous marketing activity and a strong budget request, or other request, because it may also be a commitment from other departments and bring more people on side. And the development of relationships in developing that kind of a strategy or that kind of a proposal is important, because actually you can get the coaching internally from your own finance teams, and I certainly have had that in my relationship with finance. So I know that it's something that can regularly be embraced. Next, I think it's really important to have a simple model that helps, and putting figures in helps even more. So helping finance to understand where the leaks are in the customer journey, and where the leaks are in the funnel is a great way to also demonstrate where investment is needed through finance and where value is being lost, because often it can be assumed that we just don't have enough customers coming in at the beginning of the customer journey, and that's where investment is only really justified, or in sales where the conversion and the actual money starts to land on tables. And being able to communicate to finance with the metrics of being, and this can be done through quite simple customer research, but actually being able to put percentages against the different points of the customer journey is a great way to work out where your customer expectation is, and how much investment is needed at one end to be able to get the results you're currently getting at the other, and how that can be improved along the way. And so this is a really simple model for doing it, and we have others in the paper I would recommend you using. But I also think the customer journey is the thing that we should look at internally. Let's think about our own relationship with finance as a funnel in itself, where we go from distant to evolving to a mature and trusting relationship. At that beginning point, we might have to work a lot harder to develop those relationships and to start talking to each other a lot more. But as collaboration, respect and trust evolve, I think that we can often see a much closer relationship with finance pays its dividends in those initial investments. And then finally, in evidence, having an evidence-based mindset, data beyond digital and empirical evidence, as well as value-based metrics that are really meaningful to the business, are a way of transforming marketing conversations with the finance team. And it's a great opportunity to actually start bringing to life your evidence-based mindset in empirical evidence, but also in much of the research that we've done around growth. It's a way of justifying increased investment because you're able to demonstrate what the outcomes might be from that investment, around things like share of voice, about excess share of voice, about the effectiveness of creative work and why it's justified to invest in certain pieces and not others, as well as case studies or proven value-based metrics. And obviously, I wouldn't be presenting from LinkedIn without saying that LinkedIn can be a unique partner in developing effectiveness in a forum that the CFO respects and engages with. There are great ways that we can do that, but I think that if you look across the spectrum of financial hard metrics, behavior, brand strength, and brand health, you start to see where your own work can be brought to life across each of these areas, whether that's around pipeline leads, qualified leads and rate and sale, distribution as you move across to behavior, understanding of the psychology of the customer, around brand strength and understanding where preference is and where you have leverage with existing customers or your fame within your customer base to do more, and then across to things like brand health, what customers feel, how you're perceived as a brand, and how that then gives you a level of power and engagement from customers around favorability, and where that investment is beginning to pay off around brand health, which is where you would sit in the consideration set. And in fact, the very simple demonstration of that is, are you the first one or two brands that people think of when they think of the service or product that you provide? So finally, as we look at this, we start to look at how value is created for customers and the organization with value, in accountability, being accountable for value creation, in the language that we use, using the language of value creation in business, and then in understanding, scaling the understanding of value creation in a context of literacy, financial literacy, and understanding the current relationship, collaborating and building a better relationship with each other. And that involves quite a big investment in your own time and in training the team. And then again, in evidence, having that evidence-based mindset that uses value-based metrics to be able to bring to life what you're doing in a way that can feed into not only the outcomes, but also in the level of future investment into those outcomes. And I think that we have a number of questions that work through that, which is what's happening with the customer and your relationship with them, and then how the marketing team will respond to that, and how the business empowers and supports, engages with your strategy. How does everyone understand the rationale for investment? Are you using too much jargon? Is there a way that you can translate better for colleagues and to begin to sort of internally live the business and the priorities of the business, demonstrating real understanding of the business needs and where the long-term strategy is going? What signals does the business need to see to show that your work is working, which leads to evidence, monitoring and sharing meaningful evidence shifts of and responses to the works that you're doing, and agreeing the metrics that matter. And so finally, I loved this quote. For us, marketing is a critical driver of revenue, value creation, and business development. If you're a CFO or a finance department who's responsible for business production and strategic direction and not just processing numbers, and you are not interacting with marketing, I don't know how you function as an organization. That was said by a CFO of a large services organization. You can see from the client list, we spoke to some incredible businesses in developing this narrative. And actually, I think it really brings to life how appreciated the engagement of marketing can be from our internal customer, the finance department. So I want to thank you for your time for listening to this. And I'll come out of my shared screen so that I can see you guys again.
Thank you, Jen, and well, what a great presentation. I think this is close to my heart because I handle finance in the business, so I can speak as a marketer and as a financier. I get teased and ridiculed all the time. I think Marius calls me Budget Barbie most of the time, and that's the ridicule that I get. But ultimately, finance have got the final say, don't they? And they've kind of taken us up. But before we start our fireside, picture the fire burning. It's all burning on the side. It's dark at night. Got a glass of a good South African red wine in your hand. All happening, and we're going to get real. First things first, tell us what's not on your LinkedIn profile. Come on, Jen. Let's have it.
I'll tell one that you know, John, and that isn't on my LinkedIn profile, which is I once accidentally won a pony in a raffle for £2.50. Which is, I don't know what that is in rand. It's not a lot of rand. So yeah, I once won a pony, and it was genuinely the worst pony in history. And I kept it for a very long time. I absolutely loved the pony. I was a very small child when we won it. But yeah, I had a pony, and it bit someone quite important in the UK, for which I'm very proud still.
Fantastic. Okay. I think we heard some more stories about that pony, but we're not going to go there. Not now. Let's get a little bit more serious, and let's focus on the B2B Institute itself, because there's a lot of good work coming out of there. There's a lot of papers, background work. Just tell us a little bit more briefly what the B2B Institute is about, and kind of the agenda. What's going on, because it's amazing. I love the work.
Oh, thank you. Well, I can't take much credit for it, because I'm just one little member of the B2B Institute, and I work with some considerable brains that I admire from the inside as much as they're liked and admired from the outside. But the B2B Institute is a think tank. It's funded by LinkedIn, but it has a level of independence from LinkedIn. And that means that we're able to do research outside of LinkedIn and looking at the B2B category. We predominantly look at marketing, but we look at lots of types of marketing. So everything from thought leadership and advertising across to some of the really sort of detailed bits of B2B and ABM. And we also look at things like diversity and inclusion as well. So there are a couple of like sidelines in the B2B Institute that makes it an interesting place to work. And the key thing about what we do is that all of our research is available to anyone that wants it for free. And it's available from the B2B Institute website. So if anyone wants to read our white papers or our research, it's available for free. And I guess the other thing that people assume with the name think tank that isn't true of the B2B Institute is that they assume it has an agenda, like a political agenda or some kind of business agenda. We don't really. If our agenda is probably for the betterment of the B2B world. So that's very broad, and essentially it's based on a belief that if people in B2B do really, really well, we'll still have a reason for having the B2B Institute. So we just want people to be able to do better business year on year.
Yeah, I suppose ultimately we always think there's some grand evil plan to take over the world, but there's some real good, genuine information coming out of there that's useful and usable. And that probably leads me to my next question, which is more specifically around this particular paper that you put into an amazing deck, Marketing to the CFO. So what brought about the need for the B2B Institute at the IPA, Fran in particular, to plan and write this paper? Was there a salesperson saying, we need to do work at the top here? Can we investigate what happened?
Yeah, it didn't come from sales. It came from a realization that it's really hard. Like, marketing is really hard at the moment. You're often sort of sat there with your list of requests and you're at the bottom of the list of needs. And there are some good reasons for that. Like, it's more important to pay your staff and pay your rent than do marketing. Like, we know our place. But at the same time, marketing is such an opportunity for growth and so important to business for not just recovery, but resilience and being able to navigate tough times. And even before it was tough times, because we commissioned this research in, I think, May last year, before I joined the B2B Institute. It's quite a long running piece of research, but it was this sense that, you know, marketing is often not necessarily sidelined, but isn't as big a voice in the boardroom as it used to be. And it came from some research that was done, I think I mentioned at the beginning, from EY and the FT, where we were seeing the erosion of marketing in the boardroom as a voice, but also the lack of understanding of marketing in the boardroom, meaning that you had this like double whammy of like reasons why people didn't feel like investing in marketing was as important as investing in their own department, whereas actually investing in marketing feeds so many different departments and so many different business needs, because it's the generator of growth. If you don't have more customers, you won't have more sales. And actually being the start of that kind of relationship and that conversation, the logic was kind of there that if you want B2B to be stronger, you need to to have better understanding internally and externally, but particularly internally of what marketing does, and marketing to have better understanding of what's needed of them. So if you're not in the board for those conversations, how do you have that conversation still? And the finance department's the natural ally for that.
And hence the value framework, which obviously is very useful and insightful. And
thankfully, a memorable word.
Exactly. As marketers like a little acronym, don't we? So value, it's usually beyond the 3-letter acronym, so it's going to be hard for us to work on that. But do you think we really can break through these sort of Excel guru, these budgeting bouncers, these non-EQ number crunchers? Give us the probabilities. I mean, is there some respect for us at all in the boardroom?
I really think there is. And I think the more we understand the spreadsheet mindset, the better. But also the more we understand the psychology of that, the better. So I do think as the great communicators, it's marketing's job to be the translator and to be the ones that gain the greater understanding. But also we have to be better at educating within our own boardrooms and telling them about the value that we're able to create, what levers we're able to pull as marketers versus where, and really manage the expectations of like what marketing's able to do. So I think it's probably 80% our job and 20% their job, but like everyone's got to do a little bit to listen to each other and to engage in the right language. And I actually found in this research, the bit that I loved the most was the language part, because it really started to kind of kick into the kind of psychology of marketing, that we use words because they feel like we're part of the marketing gang by using the marketing jargon that everyone else uses in our industry. But actually stepping out of that language and finding the value that you're bringing and demonstrating the sort of financial sense that there is in investing in marketing is a stronger way of putting your point across. And that's what matters in marketing at the end of the day. Do people understand what you're saying and do they find it appealing?
I agree 100%. Because in essence, what you're saying is we need to change the way we're doing things as marketers before we become redundant altogether. If we don't have time to set up that thought, we don't have the time. But sorry, Jen, carry on.
I completely agree. You know, we don't want marketing to disappear, because it's almost like sort of turning around and going, oh yeah, data can do the job, but it can't do the job because data doesn't understand the psychology of what we're doing. We have to have marketers to translate the data and also to translate the emotions of marketing, because what we're seeing is that people are more emotional right now, not less.
100% sure. I mean, certain on that we are 100%. Out of the value framework, let's say we all shattered for time, we don't have anything. What would be the most important takeaway if you had to fix something tomorrow, right now? What would you say?
Bang on understanding. Like, of the fact, language is important, but the core of all of this is understanding. Really, really getting to know your finance team and really starting to understand what makes them tick. Even down to, like, I would be going out for coffee with the CFO and working out, like, what is keeping them up at night. Because if you can understand what is really getting on the, is keeping awake your internal customer, you can start translating how important your external customer is in solving that problem.
Okay, yeah. I love this line from the exec summary. It says, a fundamental shift in the understanding that creativity and imagination, when combined with commercial discipline and a customer lens, drives sustainable, competitive and inspiring advantage and value. I know it's a long line, but obviously we know
it's not going to fit on a mug.
we know that we bring this to the party as marketers, but developing this shift is going to be like climbing Mount Everest. You talk getting language right, but did we, particularly the digital marketers, set ourselves up for failure with like getting obsessed with KPIs?
Potentially, But I do wonder actually if the answer lies with our data understanding and our digital marketers, because you're the closest to the immediate customer data. I just think quite often we look at the wrong metrics. And I would definitely recommend reading some of the stuff that's come out from Wima Schneiders in the Netherlands around the metrics that matter and getting the right data, because I think his research is really powerful. It's a great way of like helping us not just look at the instant data, not get too bound into the kind of cost per click or the cost per sales engagement, but actually looking at the broader data around reach and frequency, and actually the metrics that matter around brand engagement. And I think those are the things that give us greater opportunities once translated for the finance team to understand the future potential of the marketing contribution.
Okay, I'm with you. There's also another quote, not so nice, from an unknown global CFO of a B2B brand. He says, and I quote, "We know that these people really don't know numbers. Marketing people and salespeople are always optimistic. That's the joke we make, but everyone does. We get these pipelines from salespeople that we discount by 75 to 80% before we put them in a budget."
Like, that's brutal, isn't it?
Are we really financially illiterate?
I don't think we are. I think the fact that most of us, manage to pay our rent or our mortgage every month means that we're not, as human beings, financially illiterate. And it's no more complicated than that, really, when you get down to the brass tacks of understanding the principles of finance. If you can run yourself, you can run your business if you do it properly. I think that the issue is that we can get excluded from some of the key conversations and we can look at the wrong data. And I think that this is the beauty of the big report, and that's why I try and encourage everyone to read the white paper. There is some really no holds barred criticism in here, and there's some stuff where it's perfectly in the privacy of your own webinar or the privacy of your own team meeting to hold your hands up and go, there are mistakes that every marketer has made, and they're beautifully summarized by the receiver of those mistakes, which is often the finance department. And I think we can fail in front of each other, and then we can also succeed in front of each other, and possibly we will succeed better together. But turning up at a planning meeting with, I think one of the cases in the report is like 2 sheets of A4 scribbled down hastily as a marketing plan is not enough. And it's the sort of thing that I can imagine like Mark Ritson reaching out of the screen at you and whacking you around the head. Like, come on. But actually, it's really hard to put together, I think, any plan without consulting with the finance department and working out what the important factors you need to move in the business are and what's going to make the biggest impact. And you need that relationship to work out your prioritization and how much scope you've got. And you're going to fail unless you consult with your biggest audience. And in this case, it's the finance department. So it's one of those things where, every marketer's failed some way, every finance person's failed some way. Like we're all human and we're all fallible, but finding the opportunities to get this right they're out there. And I think what's also interesting is that a lot of people haven't read this and don't have the advantage of this knowledge. So you're already a better marketer the minute you start engaging with some of these strategies.
Now, if we had to take a little bit of a pivot, I mean, this week I saw Apple now has a market cap of over $2 trillion. That's huge. Steve Jobs ultimately set them up for success, and arguably he was a techie, of course, but he understood marketing better than many business leaders and CFOs. Is there a case for skipping that CFO and going to the CEO and kind of arm wrestling them on this particular subject about our roles? Or do we take case studies like the Apple one for a little subtle innuendo to CFOs, saying like, look at the biggest companies in the world, they all have leaders that understand marketing and its role.
Yeah, well, I think you make a good point. Like, Steve Jobs is essentially an amazing marketer, and doesn't admit it, doesn't say that it's as important as it was to him, but actually he left an amazing legacy of Apple's reputation and its priorities in product design as much as in marketing. And that showed deep understanding of human psychology as much as marketing. So I think what he did was incredible. I think often CEOs are entrepreneur marketers in the sense of they are such living embodiments of their own brand. They don't know it. They don't even recognize that it's marketing a lot of the time, that actually they are such a huge personality that defines their brand. And it's often an example of how hard it is for a business to recover when that kind of a CEO leaves, because you end up with a kind of like void of like, what does the brand stand for? The kind of conscience of the brand or the definition of the brand is gone. So those are really special CEOs, and they are obviously a gift to their own company. But I also think that it is more powerful as a marketer. You can talk to the CEO. I'm not going to stop anyone doing that. It's a bloody great idea. But at the same time, it's really important that you are in collaboration with the CFO, because the CFO has two roles, enabler and blocker. So you can go to the CEO and still be blocked by finance. But if you go together with the finance team and you're able to build a really good financial rationale, you're going to win. In fact, it's going to be very hard not to win. Like you're going to succeed, and the risk of failure is far less. And therefore, it's worth you engaging with it and putting more of your time into it, because your odds are so much better.
Tick answered. I've only got a couple more questions around this burning fire as the fire starts to cool down in this quiet African sky. There was another hour from the paper. It said, of the non-marketers in the global sample, non-marketers, only 20% believed that brands were very important to profitability, and only 19% believed they were important to growth, and only 11% of future cash flow. Yet, obviously, marketing, there are signs of marketing getting by in a little bit, of the examples in the paper. Can you give us an example, maybe, of a business that's really getting this right at all?
Yes, there are some really nice examples. I really love the example of, I'm going to give you a really B2B example. So JCB. And JCB don't know that I stalk them to a point that's really embarrassing. But actually, I find their marketing absolutely fascinating, because they are so engaged, but they don't do the kind of overt marketing that we would normally see. And I think that what they're doing is very cleverly in collaboration with their business. They follow all of these rules, but you wouldn't see 50% of what they communicate as being necessarily marketing. So I think they're very savvy in the way that they do it. A lot of the stuff that they do is they do lots of stuff helping schools. They've done a lot of stuff in the pandemic with actually engaging with providing facilities and they've got some PR buzz out of it, but actually they've done it because they believe in the importance of their role as part of infrastructure in doing that, which is really interesting, very savvy. If it's not marketing that's doing it, it's someone who should be in marketing that's doing it. And I also think what they're doing around, they've really used TikTok. They've developed their own apps online. They've actually brought together many of the pillars of marketing beyond comms in a way that enables their business to pivot in this difficult time. And their responsiveness to the current situation has been really interesting. Everything from being able to now buy a forklift truck on an app on your phone and have it delivered the next day, all the way through to being able to justify maintaining their price even when building and there's quite a serious amount of recession in building. And so all of the levers of marketing they're bringing to life in a way that I think some of those respondents didn't recognize the role of brand and the role of marketing to be able to really provide value and impact across all of the different areas of the business that they seem to be doing at the moment. And I just think also there's such a non-jazzy marketing area in just heavy construction and machinery that they also kind of fly in the face of the criticism that great marketing is done by perfumes and scotch. Actually, great marketing is often done at the coalface, literally in the case of JCB.
Okay, so we'll have to just drop that name into Marius can do that later, so people can go and have a little bit more knowledge about the brand. We're not aware of them down here. But a final question before I ask
If
you.
you don't know who they are, they manufacture diggers and forklift trucks. They are as construction as it gets. Very fun.
Oh, brilliant. Cool stuff. Okay, before I ask you what's next from the B2B Institute, final question around the fire. Now, B2C have it easier than B2B with brand investment, obviously, because they get the big chunks of budget and they spend it all the time. Yet the potential return on B2B marketing, if it's done well, like the case that you just mentioned now, could be far greater in terms of converting a lead into some hardcore long-term business. Why is it so hard for B2B businesses to take marketing more seriously? And is it because the salespeople or the sales operations are getting all the attention and focus? They think that they've got to do all the work?
I think there is a relationship with sales that is not as healthy in that way, that like actually the demarcations are much clearer in B2C around the roles. And actually in B2B, often the sales relationship is one where, because in B2B, the transactions are often higher value, the money is very much more obviously in the sales department rather than through a third party like a retailer. So there is a sort of like a disconnect between where the initial kind of idea of the sale has come from versus the conversion. But actually, I think it's around really understanding the levers that marketing is able to pull. So marketing often, the problem I see actually a lot of the time talking to marketers is that they've been sidelined into comms rather than the full suite of activities that marketing does. And so product and R&D has gone off to another department, and pricing is seen as like something that I talk to sales and finance about, rather than thinking about the value, the perceived value in the mind of the customer. And I think the other part of it is that there's been a lack of investment, because the customer is assumed to be understood if you understand the product in B2B. You often don't have the level of investment in customer research that would give marketing the kind of tools that it needs to really leverage itself to its full and to be used to its full. And I think you're right. Like, as you say, the opportunity for marketing in B2B is so much greater, because the people that do it brilliantly can take over a sector very quickly. Like it's such a great competitive advantage when marketing is done so well. I also think that I don't want to create an issue between sales versus marketing. Marketing and sales are natural brethren. Like, there are never two children more alike and more able to talk to each other than those two skill sets. And the way that you're able to get them working together and developing that relationship is the other core relationship, because you've got to be able to pass the value you've created and the opportunity you've created as marketers to sales in a way that makes sense, that loses the fewest number of people, and also that recognizes that value that's been achieved backwards as well. And often that's hard to do, because quotas and understanding and being able to hand back like a financial value is very hard. But I think that that's also where everyone needs to have quite a sort of clever relationship with the finance department, so that you're able to attribute value where it's due.
I suppose just as long as marketing are sending good quality leads to salespeople, the relationship is going to be good.
It's going to be sweet, yeah.
Otherwise, they will get angry and bully you hard. But anyway, we move on.
I also think that the area where there's the greatest pivot, sorry to interrupt, is around pricing. That actually in sales, most of the conversation is to push the price down. And your conversation with your customers is to push the price down a lot of the time. But with marketing, you have the levers to be able to justify the higher price. So people come in expecting to pay more or valuing your product more. And actually being able to develop that pricing discussion is often a really good opportunity to have the leverage that sales need to get the best value from every transaction. This is really important in B2B.
Good insight, and I think we should take that on. So I've taken up enough time. The only final question is, what's next from B2B? When are we having you back to talk about the next paper? Is there anything exciting on the horizon?
So we've just launched a beautiful paper. I can say that because I didn't write it myself. I edited it, but I didn't write it. And it was by Rory Sutherland of Ogilvy Consulting, really amazing marketing mind. And it looks very much at the psychology of B2B and the use of behavioral science as a way of navigating challenges in B2B marketing. Everything from biases within B2B to unlocking opportunities and discovering unmet needs, and ways of creating, as I said in the paper, like these moats around your business that are able to give you more protection and resilience. So I really found that fun to work on. And then I really hope to come back and talk to some of you about trends, or at least if I don't talk to you about trends, my amazing colleagues Peter Weinberg and John Lombardo have been working on a very nice trends narrative that will be looking at future trends in marketing, taking on some of the trends that we've exposed in previous papers and seeing which ones are accelerated by a current situation. And I think that's a fun one.
Exciting. Now that I've taken up all the time, we've only got 6 minutes left. I'll just take a few questions from what the audience have sent out. First question. It seems like COVID has accelerated the CMO, CFO negotiations. How do CFOs justify not hunting for new clients? What is their rationale? That's from Spiwe.
I think a lot of the time the CFOs faced with so many tough decisions around financial necessity and the pressure to cut costs rather than invest. And that's where the relationship becomes strained, and it's where it's very difficult. But where you're trying to secure business and demonstrate to shareholders that you're being extremely fiscally responsible, and I'll hear fiscal responsibility banged around a lot, then you don't want to be seen as like a wild investor in a new campaign. And I totally understand where that comes from. And I like, it's not my decision, like I don't have any power over it. But at the same time, marketers are probably the only ones who are able to sort of sit with the CFO and start to work out, okay, what are the metrics we need to move for long-term resilience and growth. And actually, we're in a period, and this is another paper that everyone's very welcome to read on, called All Weather Marketing, that my colleague John Lombardo wrote a few months ago. But it was all about how actually during this time, there is less investment in marketing amongst your entire competitor set. And so actually advertising is cheaper. If media costs are cheaper and your competitors are spending less, there is more of an opportunity to gain share. And I would love more marketers to be discussing that with their CFOs, because I actually can see some businesses really stepping forward as they're doing that. I know P&G have started to do that in B2C environment. And I can see other sort of B2B businesses taking the opportunity of cheap media to gain share at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. I suppose that links also into the CMO question. Today's been about the CFO, but Akif is saying during this time, what are the most important quick steps we can use to leverage the CMOs to unlock budgets? And that probably answers the question, isn't it? Talking share of voice, talking about, particularly in the social media space, I know on LinkedIn in particular, as demand drops, pricing gets better and there's an opportunity to go for there. And across other channels, it's the same thing, Facebook or Twitter, etc. Is that a way to answer that?
Yeah, it's perfect. And actually, if you look at what Les Burnett has been writing about, and he's done a couple of papers with us recently on this, the more you look at your excess share of voice and you look at the category norms, you can actually start to work out with a nice, very neat equation how much you need to invest to gain share of market and what the potential outcomes might be. So it feels like you're taking less of a gamble in doing that, because you can actually start to sort of create some expectations around that investment rather than just, throwing money at the problem.
Mm-hmm. And then I think just to wrap up, there's one last question from Anonymous. Which industry has outperformed the ecosystem over this time and why? Would you be able to answer?
So many. Actually, it's a very interesting question. I kind of obsess over at the moment, like, where is the money? And actually tech has done incredibly well. Anyone that works in project management software, that's a great place to be right now. There is a lot of money in health, obviously, in research. There's been a huge investment in that. Logistics is a surprising winner. And as we come out of some recession, I'm seeing a lot in sort of personal transport, personal protection, home holidays, things like that. So people creating, if you look at the psychology of it, in consumer facing, it's people are creating a bubble around themselves of protection. And so people are coming out of lockdown and buying cars, for example, so that they don't have to get on public transport anymore, or really doing some renovations on their home. My favorite, very funny one is that a lot of people are currently buying washing machines and dishwashers because they've never been at home so much more, and their kids have never created so much mess. And so DIY and getting your white goods back in to recover from, so your washing machine, your dishwasher, all of those kind of things, to recover from having family at home so much has seen an uptick, even though people aren't going into stores to buy it. That online retail, and again, online retail is the really big one, that's gone insane. So we've seen like a 43% increase in online retail.
Jeez, wow, Fran, insane. Well, Jen, I think you have paid for your B2B Institute salary today. You have worked hard. You have answered all the questions. You presented. There hasn't even been ridicules. You are just on A form, and thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you contributing to the conversation down here on the continent and adding value. We really need it, and we appreciate it so much. From a media perspective, you know, it's a great honor to have you with us, and from the team, we just want to thank you, as well as all of our clients, and they've appreciated the session, so a big thank you.
I'm glad. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to see all of you. Lots of love to South Africa.